Hello, this is Victoria and Victoria, reading authors, and we are just gonna jump right in with a discussion of A Court of Thorns and Roses, with the understanding that I have kids at home and background noise. And Victoria, do you want to say hello really quick?
Hi everyone, how's everybody doing today?
Okay. Just full disclosure to any of our followers, actually, Victoria, I don't know if you noticed, but we got a subscriber to our channel the other day. It's my sister. Hi!
Hi! Is that Becca?
Yes, it is. So full disclosure, we are techno noobs and we're just going to do our best. And on my end, it even looks like my audio is not matching with my video. And I think I already mentioned the background noise, so please bear with us and be patient. But go ahead and give us a like and subscribe if you haven't already, because that'll make us feel better.
For sure.
All right. Victoria, would you like to give maybe a synopsis of the first book of A Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas?
Well, I will do my very best, as we kind of read this book a couple of weeks ago, and I haven't quite yet got the chance to reread it yet. But Court of Thorns and Roses begins with this character, Feyre, who is living in abject poverty, I would say. She is having to she's a young lady having to take care of her two sisters and her father. She is the only person bringing in any food, which sometimes will create a little bit of coinage if they need to buy something, but she is the sole person taking care of her family. And we start, the beginning of the book sort of starts with a scene where she is out hunting and she has to make a choice to hunt an animal, whether she's going to kill this animal or not. I don't know how much you want me to tell. I don't want to tell the whole story.
No, that's great. That's a great beginning. That's where the start of this whole adventure begins. It is a 3-book series until May, and then she has a 4th coming out, which I can tell you, Victoria and I are super excited for that day to happen. It is the series involves the High Fae, so the kind of the fairy world, if you will. They're, for all intents and purposes, immortal. They have superpowers and their own code of politics and polite society. And there is a kind of a great danger headed towards the human lands. And there's an uneasy truce between the humans and the Fae. So Feyre gets caught up in this, and I do apologize for the background noise. What is if you could pick an overarching theme, Victoria, for book 1, what would you say?
Oh, there's several themes there. Of course, both of us love romance stories, so we have to point out there is a little bit of a unusual romance that is in the first book. However, I think the first book, the overall theme is Feyre learning who she is. And by that, I don't mean any of the supernatural fairy type things that occur in the book, but more who she is as a being, what leads her to make any kind of choice that she makes.
Thank you, and I'm glad you brought up romance, because as a romance reader and author myself, I tend to read all books through that lens, and it's not always an appropriate lens. For example, sci-fi doesn't usually lend itself well to romance unless the author has intentionally put it in there. I am going to mute my microphone for a minute and go yell at my children. So if you want to, I'm trying to think what you could talk about for a second, because I was going to go at it from the romance angle. Any thoughts, Victoria, before I mute this, and then I'm going to go do a little smackdown.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I will talk a little bit about Feyre and her new romance interest that she has found.
Okay, hang on.
So Feyre, in the beginning of the book, Feyre meets this fairy who he's a high lord of the Spring Court. His name's Tamlin, and they don't quite get along. Feyre has been raised as human to hate fairies. She's been raised to not hate them to the point of being willing to kill them. And so she meets this person, this high fae, and she immediately dislikes him. Are you back?
I am back.
I was just talking about Feyre coming to the Spring Court and meeting Tamlin, and how she was raised to totally hate fairies. So they do not get along in the beginning whatsoever.
Yeah, that is a popular trope in many romance novels because those sparks between two love interests often turn into a flame of love. Her personality, Feyre's personality, is so spot on with kind of the trend in female protagonists of modern day literature. If you think about Katniss Everdeen in Hunger Games, you think about the Divergent series, just these strong female personalities who reject the notion of needing anyone to save them. And I feel like Feyre fits that to a T.
Absolutely. She starts out in the beginning being everything's on her shoulders. So I don't think it ever occurs to Feyre to have someone save her. I think she just is going to go and do whatever needs to be done.
Yes, exactly. And it leads to an interesting conundrum for her as she's in the Spring Court with Tamlin, because now she's introduced to a life of leisure, and she seriously is twiddling her thumbs. She does not know what to do with herself. That situation is, you and I have kind of talked about this before, almost like the author is poking fun at the fairy tales. What happens after Cinderella hooks up with Prince Charming? What happens when the princess and the prince are married in the so-called happily ever after? And even though at the beginning of the book, Tamlin and Feyre are not lovers, there is kind of this sense of she was rescued from poverty, at least. And so now she has, her clothes are laid out for her every day. The meals are prepared, and she's really living in this lap of luxury.
Yeah, we have discussed this a little bit. It's interesting to see how quickly she decides, I don't have anything to do. What am I supposed to do now? There are multiple instances where she talks about walking around the rose garden. Like, what else is she gonna do? And it's interesting to see very early on that she starts to, even though she's been handed everything she could possibly ever want, and if she had dreamed up anything else, they also would have given her that. She still finds a little unrest within herself. She needs to be productive, and she doesn't know what that productivity is gonna be.
Exactly. I think the author does a really fantastic job of setting her up for the adventure that takes place in the rest of the book. And she has this moment of, if you consider her boredom, and at the same time that she's living in very comfortable circumstances, she also knows that something is going on. Tamlin and the rest of his court are very secretive. They are under a curse and are forbidden to tell her anything about it. But she's no fool. She knows something is going on, and she finds out there is a way that she can capture a dangerous mythical creature to get some answers. And that scene is one of my favorites in the first book.
The Suriel's one of mine too. In fact, probably one of my favorite characters throughout the first 3 books. I really like the Suriel.
Yes, and probably the thing that I like most about that scene is she gets many answers. She does not get all of the answers that she needs, but she gets many, and then she's in danger from another group of baddies. And she has to make a choice. She could leave immediately and save herself, or she could spare a few moments and break the trap that she had set to capture the Suriel and save its life. And that's what she chooses to do. And I know we love that aspect of Feyre's character, just her selflessness.
And that scene right there is, we already knew that she was willing to do anything for her family. But that particular scene with Feyre shows us that she is willing to do the right thing, the selfless thing, no matter who or what it is that's involved. And it really builds something in Feyre's character that's needed for the rest of the plot.
That you put that so well and perfectly. That's exactly true. That is kind of the moment where you realize she is a woman of integrity and selflessness. And in fact, spoiler alert, she does carry that trait through to the end of book 1. Maybe one last thing for us to talk about is the love that we consider, or I should say, this is really interesting because we've talked about this before, and I've consistently said, I have a problem with her love interest in Tamlin. Was it enough love to warrant sacrificing her life? Because she is asked to do that at the end of the book. And I've just wondered, was there enough love to build on that? But you bring up a really good point when you talk about what she did for the Suriel. She did what was right, not necessarily what would benefit herself personally.
Right, and because we had kind of talked about this before, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and the only thing I can compare it to is that first love, where everything is that white picket fence, whether it is or not, and you really would, or at least I know that I would have done anything, anything for that first love, because I believe that was it and forever. And I think that's where Feyre was. I think it never occurred to her. She did not know enough yet to know that that might not be everything. I think when she went under the mountain, she went under the mountain because she thought Tamlin was her person or her fairy or whatever. He was the one. I think she believed that even with the tiny little things that we know were already not quite right. I think she did love him enough to go under there. And she's selfless enough that when she saw how many of the Fae were affected by this horrible, horrible woman, that she had to do what needed to be done no matter what, not just for Tamlin and the Spring Court, but for all of the Fae.
Yes, definitely. I've had people talk about how in a lot of, at least American literature, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but at least in, the confines of the United States, a lot of books, a lot of fiction have kind of a Christ figure. And it's pretty easy to see that Feyre kind of plays that role in book one, just that sacrifice for the behalf or on the behalf of other people.
Definitely. Now you've got me. I'm going to not go on this tangent, but now I want to, in another conversation, talk about books from other countries, because that theme actually is present in some of the books that I have read. But that's another topic for another day.
That's awesome. We always are going to have things to talk about, which is very exciting. I think just in the interest of time that maybe we can wrap up our short little discussion. We kind of touched on some of the main topics that we really enjoyed in book one, A Court of Thorns and Roses. Do you have any parting thoughts about book one, Victoria?
Parting thoughts. I loved book one so much that I personally sent you a text and said, you have to get these books. However, I had no idea what we were getting into, because book one is just a building block. It's excellent. It's wonderful. Everyone should read it. But the following books are so much more. So I think my final parting thought for book one is it's amazing. The journey, it's one of those books where there's something constantly happening. So you don't ever get bored. Something is always happening very quickly. It's very fast paced. So book one is great. It's perfect to set up for the rest of it. It's one of the few times that I'm glad it's a series. I would have been sad if this was a standalone book.
I concur. It was a fantastic book. And what is fascinating is that each subsequent book, in a way, surpassed the one preceding. So I don't know how she's going to pull off book four. As an author, I feel tremendous pressure if I have written something in a series to try and continually improve. And she really, her writing style, her world building and characterization really blew me out of the water. She did a fantastic job. So how many stars would you give A Court of Thorns and Roses?
Can I say like 1 million, or should I stick with 5?
The standard industry is 5. Yeah, I totally went on Amazon and gave it 5 stars, unequivocal 5 stars.
Definitely 5 stars for sure.
All right. Well, we will include a link to that book in the comments below. If you have anything that you would like to share about this series, please. And would you like to say hi to my little noisemaker?
Hi.
Can you wave?
Hi.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're signing out for now. Remember, 2 internet friends and thousands of books. We are just getting started.
Bye, everyone.